Hi guys, Andy here, and here to bring you all things Monday to makeup related. If that's your vibe, I'd love it if you would subscribe to be part of my little slice of the internet. And in today's video, we're going to go through my no pan left behind for the first half of the year. I figured now would be a perfect time to go through it. We're also going to go through my completion percentages with that. So I figured I'd do a video now and then a video at the end of the year. So if you're curious as to all the palettes that I have completed, no pan left behind style, then let's go ahead and get on into it. Alrighty, so we're going to start with January and work our way all the way down to July. So, well, to June, because July's not over, so I don't have all the information for July. I mean, I can tell you what I've done so far, but so for January, the palettes that I have decluttered, I'm going to throw photos up for you because I've decluttered a lot of palettes this year. So, those will be shown. The first one is the Beauty Summer Days palette. That was my Level Up palette that was a project I abandoned. So, I would eventually like to do that project again, but just when I'm better at panning eyeshadows. But I did that palette back in January, so all these palettes, January. Until I say we're in February, these are all January. So I enjoyed that palette. I didn't like any of the shimmers, really, but the mattes were really nice, and I honestly thought about keeping it just for the mattes, because they were really pretty. Then we have all three of the Ensley Rain little 6-pan palettes that I have. So we have What the Fox, which looks like this, which I do really like this one. I think the greens are a little too similar on the eye, but otherwise beautiful. Then we have Hoppy Go Lucky, which is my favorite, isn't it? Yeah, I would say it's my favorite. I love this shade. The shimmers, it's just the composition of this one is beautiful. And then I have Nutty by Nature. I want the hedgehog one so bad. And this one is stunning. Stunningly gorgeous. Like, it's a tie between these two as my favorite. I do like What the Fox. But those two greens being so similar really does, like, bring that palette down for me. So I did get these in PR from Ensley Rain, so there's that. Take that with what you will. I don't have a problem with Ensley Rain. Made a whole video on it, on those palettes and that, if you're looking for that. So everything else that I did in January, I have decluttered. So we have the Viseart Water Lotus, which I loved the color story of. But I also made a whole video on the Viseart palettes because I've decluttered every Viseart palette that I own. I am allergic to the Viseart matte formula. It happens. So you can be allergic to formulas, the colors, the pigments, the dyes, anything. So it's unfortunate, and it is what it is. But I really loved this color story. I love the teals. The shimmer. So in all of the Viseart palettes, because they usually have 2 mattes and 2 shimmers in the quads, the lighter shimmers suck. The duochromes or the specialty shimmers, gorgeous and beautiful, and I love them so much. But the mattes, their matte formula is so good, and I was so, like, I cried. I was so upset that I'm allergic to it. But that palette was beautiful. Then we have the Viseart Florette Amour, gorgeous. The blushes, I almost pulled the blushes out of this palette to keep it because the blushes didn't bother my face. But if I'm giving that palette to someone, I just feel so bad pulling shades out of it. So I left them in there, even though they're gorgeous. I will say, though, the shades in this palette pull so much more warm pink than they look in that pan. Then we have the most beautiful out of all of the palettes that I had from Viseart, the Violetta. And this one bothered my eyes the worst, probably because it was the darkest. But it was so gorgeous. Nope, couldn't have it. Can't have nice things. And then we have the ColourPop Troublemaker. Horrible palette. Horrible, awful, no good, very bad palette. In fact, let me pull up, because I have photos on my tablet. which are the photos that I'm showing you guys. Let me make sure I'm thinking of the right one. Yeah, that palette. So all of the shimmers in this palette sucked. They were horrible. All of the dark mattes were patchy and horrible. And the light mattes were non-existent on the face. It was just a bad palette. And then last but not least, the very last palette that I did in January was the Jeffree Star Controversy. And apparently I don't have that. Oh, yeah, I do. Okay. And the Controversy palette that I have was the original one that has the brown shade in the center, which is annoying. I wish I would have had the one with the green. But the palette felt so random. Like, every time I looked at this palette, I was like, I don't know what I want to do with it. Because I feel like you either get a purpley blue look or you get a neutral look. And I didn't think, they didn't pair well together. Like, the tones of the neutrals and the tones of the purple blues did not pair well together. The only shade in this palette that I liked was that, like, taupey shimmer in the corner. So I decluttered it. And I wish that was a magnetic palette because I would have saved that shimmer. But I didn't, and it's fine. So for numbers, the numbers that I'm keeping track of. So I'm keeping track of how many pans that I touch out of all of the pans in my collection, and then how many palettes I touch out of all of the palettes in my collection. Just so we're on the same page. And obviously these numbers will change as I've decluttered things. So in January is my highest number of palettes. So we're going to get less, and the numbers are going to go up as we go. But January, I used 137 shadows, so I touched 137 shadows out of 2,492 shadows. So my usage was 5.49%. And my 100% completion, I used 9 palettes out of 203 palettes. So that put us at 4.43% used. Which honestly, for January, I don't feel like that's bad. But seeing those numbers, it is what really kicked me into high gear of decluttering. So next, for February, we started off with the Profusion Meadow palette. Love it. I loved the 2 distinct rows, the blues, murky and beautiful, the burgundies, murky and beautiful. This palette was just really old, which is why I had to declutter it. And Ian even loved this palette so much that he was like, I want you to rebuy that. So it's still on my mind as something like, hey, if I see it in Walmart or something, I should rebuy that. Because it was beautiful, and I love Profusion's formula, but it was like a 7-year-old palette in my collection. So it was time for it to go. Oh, Gatorade. Next, we actually have a palette that I have in my collection. It's the ColourPop Blow and Smoke palette. I did no pan left behind this. This is my favorite silver in my collection. It's the shade Starstruck. It is beautiful. And this is gorgeous. I love it. I actually keep this in my palette panning drawer because if I ever need that silver, it's there. But if I ever just need like a black or a gray to deepen something up, this is just chilling in my drawer. So I like having that there. This is just a beautiful companion palette. I honestly don't feel like I reach for it that much on its own, except for like New Year's, you know? But otherwise, I reach for that silver and I reach for the matte black quite a bit. I mean, not quite a bit, but for the palette's sake. Then, and I can show you the difference here because we have the ColourPop Sprinkle a Little Magic palette. So on the screen, you're going to see what the original looks like, which that's what no pan left behind, was the original. That was in my Color Pan Project pan. But I have since changed up what the palette looks like. This is what mine looks like now. I changed out these 4 shades, yes, because I did not like the ones that were in the palette. So, this is what mine now looks like. But I loved the rest of these shades. I actually used these two as blushes. This is a beautiful gold. The greens are gorgeous. But the darker greens that were originally in the palette, I didn't enjoy. The pinky shimmer in the bottom of the palette, it was a weird color and I didn't like it. And then the green shimmer in the center of the palette, I didn't enjoy either. So. Then we have more Viseart palettes that I used in February because I was trying to double check that, like, hey, am I really allergic? Do I have to declutter all of my Viseart palettes? And I did. So we have the Viseart Floret Bijou, which is the other face palette, which I didn't like this one as much, which is odd because I love oranges, but this is more like peach than orange. But it was fine. It was fine. Just fine. It did its job. It still bothered my eyes a little bit, but that one probably bothered my eyes the least amount that I can remember. Then we have the Viseart Sakura Lotus. This one was boring. Just the composition of it was boring. And that's how I feel about that. Next we have the Milani Most Loved Mattes. This was in my Pan the Alphabet Project pan. It was the letter B, I believe. And I panned a shade in there, and then I decluttered the palette because it was very, very old. And it was just a dusty formula. It wasn't working the same. It is a discontinued palette. I do miss it. I'm very sad that Milani has discontinued that palette. So. Then we have the After Hours. I was looking at the wrong palette. Yeah. But I feel the same as I felt about the Troublemaker palette. The shimmers suck. The mattes suck. I bought the After Hours and the Troublemaker in the same order. And it's just, they were bad palettes. And I've never bought a ColourPop palette and had it just straight up be bad. I was so upset with those in that order. It was awful. Couldn't believe it. Couldn't believe my eyes. Then we have the Violet Voss Violet Sunset. I can't remember why I had no pan left behind that. But I'm kind of over the Violet Voss formula. Like, it's just fine. The color story was fine. But their shimmers are a thicker formula, and that's not the kind of formula that I love. Their mattes are very nice, but I just didn't need it. And then the last palette for February is the Tribluxe Beauty Wednesday palette, which is an all shimmer palette, which I just don't love. Do not love all shimmer palettes. And this is just a very unique palette. It just wasn't for me. Beautiful formula. Absolutely loved the formula. But just the color story and the fact that it was all shimmer just wasn't for me personally. So for February, we touched 176 shadows total out of 2,198 to give us a pan usage percentage of 8.01%. Nice. And then our 100% completion, we touched 9 palettes still. We didn't use any more because I don't count the palettes I've decluttered. I'm only counting things that are currently in the collection. So 9 palettes out of 178 palettes. So that brings our completion percentage to 5.06%. Nice. So now we start to bring things down a little bit with how many palettes we're using. So for March, we're going to start it off with the Nomad Love and Death palette. Horrible palette. I have so many bones to pick with this palette. So the shimmers are garbage. The mattes, all of the mattes were beautiful. Loved the mattes. We'll start with the nice thing, because I loved the mattes. I will say the pinky red side, the mattes were a little redundant, but that, like, grungy side, beautiful. But the shimmers were horrible. Across the board. Worst Nomad palette I've ever used. So I tried to repress them with alcohol. Didn't work. Tried to repress them with a mixing medium. Didn't work. So then I scraped all those shimmers out and I repressed Super Shock shadows from ColourPop in there. And they immediately went bad, so I just decluttered the whole palette. Then we have the Beauty Bakery Breakfast in Bed palette. That palette, again, is like 8 or 9 years old. I got that from BoxyCharm way back in the day. And though the color story is unique, the formula was just not up to par. And I have learned something. If you have one palette in your collection, like one specific palette, and it's a unique color story, is it in your collection and unique because you never touch it, or because you use it all the time? You know? So, decluttered that. Then we have the Unearthly Dead of Night palette. I had this in a project. Can't remember off the top of my head now. But I did have this shade in a project to use 13 times. I didn't end up doing that, I don't think. But I got a nice dip on it. I will say, my only critique is that the shimmers are dark. I don't mind that the matte shades are dark, because I love Unearthly's formula. I really do. But I just wish, even if we just had one shimmer that was lighter so that we had an inner corner highlight. But I have other palettes, I have single shadows, it's not the end of the world. The color story is gorgeous, the formula is gorgeous. It is what it is. Then we have the Natasha Denona Rasha palette. I think I've traded out 2 or 3 shadows. I know this isn't originally in here, and neither is this shade, but otherwise, like, all the mattes are original. I love the marbled shade. I think it's a good palette overall. My lid is very, like, loose. And I don't like that, but otherwise, it's a fine palette. It's definitely not my favorite, but it's fine. It's not something I see myself decluttering anytime soon. And then the last palette for March is the Uoma by Sharon C. Dreaming Quad. Again, very old palette in my collection. It probably 6 or 7 years old. It was before Ian and I got together. Beautiful formula. Beautiful. I'm so sad that that it went out of business, because it was gorgeous. I loved the foundation that I had. I used up the bronzer. Like, this quad was gorgeous. It was beautiful, but I had to get rid of it. So for March, we used 210 shadows out of 2,310 shadows total to bring our percentage to 9.09%. And our 100% completion of palettes is 11 out of 193, which brings our pan percentage, or completion percentage, to 5.70%. April! Lots of ColourPop. So we have the Off Melrose palette, which I do have. I didn't grab that. So mine is going to look very, very different. Did I pull up the original? Do I have that? No. That's fine. I pulled out all the shimmers. My shimmers are all different because I did not like the shimmers, and there was a pressed glitter in here originally, and then I might have changed this and this matte out. But I originally, no pan left behind what was in here except the pressed glitter, because I had already pulled that out. But this is what mine looks like now. I think it looks really pretty. I haven't used this since I reorganized my ColourPop palettes, but that's what mine looks like now. Then we have the Boudoir Noir, which there's a photo of that up there. I'm so sad I had to let those palettes go, because I had its sister palette too. But they were just... Originally I pulled out the glitters, because I was like, the glitters are going. We need to throw those out. And then I sniffed the palette, and it was time. Because I bought those palettes when they came out, so years ago for the holiday release. So it was just time. And then we have the ColourPop Miss Bliss palette. I had pulled that glitter out, but I used the rest of the palette. And it was fine. There was nothing remarkable about it, so I let that palette go as well. And the last palette for April was my Bella Beaute Bar Basic Witch palette. Love this palette. This is my favorite shade. It's the shade Incantation. I also really love Creep It Real. My one complaint about this palette is I don't think we needed both of these shades. I think on the eye they're too similar, because this shade and this shade are very different, but these two on the eyes are very similar. So, but otherwise, love this palette. It's gorgeous. It's the only Bella Beaute Bar palette I own currently, just because they're expensive. but I would love to own more. So eventually we'll get there, but love it. So for April, we went to 266 pans touched out of 2,266 pans total, which brought our pan usage to 11.74%. And then our 100% completion went to 15 palettes out of 189, which brought our percentage to 7.94%. Woo! All right, for May, we're going to start with the Makeup by Mario Bronzy Glam Quad. Awful. Awful. The matte brown was just bad. The textured shimmer, hated it. Hated the texture of it. And the other two shimmers just weren't pigmented. So it was not for me. Quads have to be very special. We do have a quad that we'll talk about later here that is, but quads have to be special. Then we have the Nomad America's Route 66. I did get this in PR from Nomad, so love that. Thank you to them. My one complaint is I still don't think that the pink belongs in the palette. I think it clashes with the orange. Can you work it and make it work and make it look pretty? Yes. But in the looks that I'm going to do with the palette, I don't think the pink belongs. But it is a very pretty palette. I think it's one of Nomad's best formulas. Love it. It is gorgeous. Then we have the Pat McGrath Eternal Eden Quad. Again, quads have to be special. The mattes were actually beautiful. I did really, really love the mattes, which is crazy because normally in Pat McGrath palettes, it's all about the shimmers and the mattes are just kind of mid. But those shimmers, the darker one pulled so much darker on the eye than it even looked in the pan, and the lighter shimmer is a satin, and I don't like satin shades, so it had to go. Then we had the Jeffree Star Blood Sugar palette. Hated it. It was my Battleship Project pan palette, and I decluttered it. I liked two shades out of this palette. It's the white shade, and then that like gray purple shade in between the pink and the purple. Every other shade was awful. All the shimmers they just sucked. And all the other mattes were just mid. So, not a Jeffree Star palette for me. Then we have my Pretty Evil Cosmetics and Ice Nine Kills Welcome to Horrorwood palette. This was in a project. Love this. I do have some critiques. The orange and the red are very similar on the eye. And I don't think the purple belongs. And then this red shimmer is more of a satin compared to the other shimmers in the palette. And I wish it was darker. But otherwise, like, I do like the palette. Dust to Dust is my favorite shade. The Silver Scream is really good. So it's nice. I do like it. Ice Nine Kills is my favorite band. So yeah, I enjoy. Then we have, this is my current Pan the Alphabet palette. This is the Wicked Widow Lovesick palette. So I'm working on the shade Come Back Home, but I have fully used the whole palette. My only complaint about this palette is this shade pulls gold. And it just feels a little, I wish it pulled a pink or a purple. Like pulling gold, I just don't feel like goes. But the whole palette is just stunning, and I want more from Wicked Widow ASAP. And the last palette for May was the ColourPop Muse Moment palette, and I like this palette for what it is. The 3 rows individually, great and beautiful, but when I thought about the palette as a whole, I would never pair any of them together, and I just didn't need that, so I let that go. So for May, we had 259 shades used out of 1,732, which brought our pan usage percentage to 14.95%. And our 100% completion was 13 palettes out of 130, which brought us up to 10% even. And now for last month, for June, we started with the Morphe Rose de Fame. This palette surprised me. So the mattes were really great. The 4 regular shimmers were also really great. But the molten metal in the middle, so disappointing. Because I tried it wet, because it's a wet to dry shade, and it wet was awful. It's better dry, and that's just disappointing to me because the whole point of it is so you use it wet because it's a molten metal. And I just didn't enjoy that because the mattes and the shimmers, though they're a nice formula, the shades aren't anything revolutionary, so I didn't need it in my collection, so I let it go. Then we have the Natasha Denona Love Face Palette. It's just, it went off on me. So the highlighter I have in a different palette, so I didn't need the highlighter. The blush was expired. It was chunky and gross, so I had to get rid of that. And so the eyeshadows, they were beautiful, and I loved them. I think 4 out of the 5 shades I put into other palettes that I have. So, amalgamated it. Then we have the one quad that I own in my collection. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Queen of Luck quad. I don't know, it's gorgeous. The matte is buildable and beautiful. This has just the slightest bit of texture, and it's gorgeous. The duochrome is beautiful, and this has shine on the inner corner, and the look that I made was so stunning, it blew me away. So it's the only quad I own in my collection, and I love it. Then we have the Natasha Denona Yucca palette, which I no longer own. I did take a couple shades out of it, and I think I threw them into my Retro Glam palette. But the mattes were bad. They really needed built up. They were really, really sheer. And only those 4 super shiny shimmers were things that I enjoyed. I'm so sorry if you can hear the lawnmower because they're mowing the yard now. So I let it go. And last but not least, for June, we have the ColourPop High Tide palette. I love this palette. I've said that I would never declutter this palette, but I did just buy a palette. It just came in, and it has these exact shades, and it's new, so I let it go because that palette is old, and I can tell that it's old, and so I no longer need it, and that hurt my soul to get rid of it. So for June, we had used 325 shades out of 1,684 to give us a usage percentage of 19.30%. And then we used 17 palettes out of 125 palettes to give us a completion percentage of 13.60%. Now, obviously, July is not over, so I can't give you any percentages or totals for July. That will be something I do for you in December. But I have already fully completed 2 palettes for July, so I figured I would just tell you those. We have the Jeffree Star Star Ranch palette, which looks like this. This palette is stunning. I no longer really have any blues from Jeffree, so I love those. This shade is gorgeous. It's my favorite shimmer. And this is my favorite matte. I used every shade in my look that I did, and it just turned out so beautiful. I was in love with it. And then we have the Simply Posh Coastal palette. I did 3 looks. What is this? Is there still a sticker on here? There is! Okay, well, I'll get that off after. Anywho. I did 3 looks with this, and my thing is, I love the mattes. The mattes are gorgeous and beautiful, but the shimmers are disappointing. The only 2 shimmers I like are these 2. The other 4 are disappointing. So, but the mattes are beautiful. I do really like them. Overall, the palette is nice. I feel like if I was going to get anything else from Simply Posh, it would just have to really be a color story that excited me now that I know how I feel about the formula. But that is it for my No Pan Left Behind so far for the year and my percentages that I've been keeping track of. Let me know how you feel about that. Are any of these palettes your favorite? I hope that you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.